Hi all. Is this too loud? All right. So hi everybody, thanks for coming. I'm Dimitri. I come from Greece, hence a strange accent. I'm going to talk to you a bit about Python localization today, best practices, how people usually do it, how smart people do it, and talk a bit about development and localization and how things should be done in the future, more or less, how we're changing, how localization is being changed, and where is it going. One of the questions I want to ask you in the beginning is, how many are developers in here? Everyone, cool. And how many have already localized their app and have it in multiple languages? Okay, around half of them. And how many haven't heard about localization before and want this to be an introductory talk? Not many, great. All right, so I work for a startup called Transifex. It's a Python-based, Django-based startup working on localization tools. Transifex is a localization software as a service tool. Similarly to GitHub for coding, we are GitHub for translations. But we're going to talk more about this a bit later. So what is localization? Localization is how you adapt the software so that it's available to multiple regions around the world, multiple cultures. And also, it's the process of actually translating it. Some people distinguish the two between globalization and localization, but that just confuses people. So let's just consider localization as the global process that you take your software from just English and you actually launch in multiple languages. So the key idea is, of course, how do you get your software from just one language and ship it to multiple dozens or, I don't know, 50 markets worldwide. And localization is, of course, just the first step. So the goal is to make your app look all Greek to you. Of course, if you're shipping to China or France or other countries, if your app is only in English, it does look all Greek to them. So you do want to translate your software. There are many reviews and statistics on why it's important. Like 95% of the world's population does not have English as their native language, and more than 1 out of 2 people online do not speak English at all. So today, with how easy it is to create a web application, it's kind of a no-brainer to actually ship in many languages. So what's the traditional workflow in translating a software and localizing it in many languages? First of all, in your code, you use special libraries to mark your translatable strings, as these are English strings, but ideally, in the end product, when I switch my language, I want them to be replaced with Brazilian Portuguese strings. So you mark them with these special libraries, and then you export these strings into special plain text files that are given to translators. When you're ready to release, you actually create a string freeze. You freeze the UI so that translators can start working and bring their translation to 100%. If you don't string freeze, then you change a string, and when a translator thinks that your app is 100% translated, it will be 99% translated. So you wait for, I don't know, 1 week, it depends on the size of the application, for translators to work. And then the hard part starts, because translators have no idea how to get your files. You can give them access to your version control system, but translators really don't want that because they are linguist people, they're not technical people. So translators really hate Git. I know that sounds strange, but they do. So they take the files, they translate them offline using specialized tools, and then your problem starts. How do you get those files back? Sometimes you need to receive them by email, or you give SSH access to your translators, or they create tickets on your ticketing system. And this takes a lot of time, especially when you do agile localization. We have weekly release cycles. We cannot do this for 40 languages. So let's see, how do we do localization, since some people haven't seen this before. So this gettext is one of the special libraries in Python that you can use. There are a couple of others, but gettext is definitely the most popular one. So you just mark your string as translatable using a notion similar to this one, a shortcut similar to this one. In Django, it's a bit similar. You import from Django utils translation special functions, and you mark the strings for translation. This is an example of of a Django model, and we translate the name of the model and the help text as well. By the way, feel free to interrupt me at any point when there are questions. So this was just an example in Python code. Of course, you don't only have Python code. You have so many other things in your app. Usually in your web app, you have templates, you have JavaScript. There are so many other ways to mark strings for translation. In the Django templates, you use special template tags for that. The trans one is the most simple one. And then there are more complex ones like block trans with count. And this helps translators translate something in multiple plural forms. In English, there are only 2 plural forms, one for one and then one and many. So this way you can mark it. But in other languages, of course, you have multiple plural forms. Like in Arabic, has 6 plural forms. So when you export your files into PO files, your translations into PO files, then the Arabic version will allow the translator to actually have 6 different translations for these 2 English translations. Now, how do you generate those PO files? It's very easy. There are some command line tools that do that. And Django has a handy admin command to export all your translations into one PO file. So this way we got our translation files, and now we need to decide how we're going to send those to translators. So in the traditional model, you have your content management system. That's probably Git for developers, but it might be a website. It might even be your Django database that you have strings inside and you want to translate. So you have your strings stored somewhere. What you usually do is you code in English, and that green arrow means that it's part of your workflow. But then you need to get that English file, give it to the translators, either your team coordinator, localization manager, or you send it by email or something like that. And then this happens for all languages. And if you have a review process on top of that so that your quality improves, you need to do that a bunch of times. And then you get all those files and upload them again in your Git repository. And this is, of course, suboptimal, right? Because these 4 points that we mentioned before are still not automated. And the funny thing is that developers know about this, and there aren't many solutions to fix this. People produce workarounds. For example, use GitHub and issue pull requests, but that's, again, suboptimal and takes a lot of time. So the idea is for developers to not even spend any time on localization. They should just code and write in English strings, and everything else should be happening outside of the developer workflow. And even professional tools, big companies have not solved this. So usually, even big companies send emails to the translation agencies, or they build their own localization platform. I was talking with Evernote the other day, and they spent like 2 years building their own localization platform. And of course, if you actually use the first method, you give away a lot of control to the translation agency. Basically, you give them all your data. They control the translation memory and all your past translations. They dictate the budget. And of course, you don't know who translates your app. Basically, they can choose anyone they want. So that's why we built Transifex as a way to make translation suck less. It's a software as a service product. Its goal is to produce quality localization. It targets dynamic content like software, not books, for example. Books are translated in a great way using translation agencies because you write it once, you send it to the agency, you get it 3 weeks later or 3 months later translated, and that's fine. But when you do weekly release cycles, that's impossible to manage. And we're building it as a software as a service so that we can have a centralized place to find translators, both for open source projects as well as companies and proprietary projects. The difference from all the other tools out there is that it's built for developers. It's built for software projects, really. And of course, it's open source. So we're turning this workflow into something much more simple. And instead of you having to download the files, Transifex connects to the content management system. There are also shortcuts for you to send files directly to Transifex. And Transifex gets the English files, gives them out to the translators, and then sends everything back. So, for example, you might just write English strings, and then language files just are automatically committed to your version control system. So there are no red arrows, actually. You can do it without no manual process. So some of our customers, we have some big names like you might know, like Intel, Nokia, Firefox. Fedora is being translated using Transifex. Reddit since last week. Eventbrite, Django itself, Mercurial, and around 2,500 open source projects. Some context to see the size of the project. We started as a Google Summer of Code project, actually, and it turned out to a profitable company. There are 17,000 people using our service, 3,000 projects in total. Users that read translatable content from Transifex is probably around 100 million, probably more. We have no way to count it. And there are 9 average languages per project on Transifex. We use Django Python, all the modern database technologies for our heavy stuff. We wrote our own Django add-ons extension system. And we use around 58, 60 Django apps and Python dependencies. So here's how the Django localization project looks in Transifex. So this is similar, for example, with a Git project page. It's a home for the Django localization process. You can see the number of the languages that it's being translated into. We only see 100% language here. Further down in the table, there are lower percentages as well. So you can find who is responsible for the localization. There are 4 guys there. Let's see, the next slide should show the files of Django. So it's the admin, it's the core product, and there are around 8, I think, files right now translated through Transifex. Now, each of these files has a number of strings inside and a number of words. This is the Portuguese version. It's 94% translated. And there are a bunch of options there. You can download the file. You can download it for translation and then upload it so that you can translate it offline. And of course, there's a big button there called Translate Now, which opens the web-based translation editor so that translators can work inside Transifex instead of working offline. Now, how do you send these files to Transifex, though? How can you really start automating your workflow? We have a command line client, similar to Git and Mercurial, called TX. You can install it with just an easy install or pip install. And then this client actually maps your local files in your repository, in your directories, to Transifex resources. So when you start tracking your files and you can upload them on Transifex, then the client keeps this in sync, so it knows which files to push where. So you use the txset command for that. This one says, take all the translations that are in the translations directory, replace that lang keyword with the language names, and upload them to the project called myproj on Transifex and name the resource myres. And of course, you define the source language as well. So this creates a local configuration file on your system on a .tx directory inside your directory. So you can actually commit this file in your repository so that other developers in your project, when they clone your repository, they can just run txpool and they will get the files. So this way, you don't need to manage this and create it all the time. So this is the configuration for the example that we saw before. What this does is that it starts tracking the 16 files of Django, and it can map the language names with local files. So the next time that you actually run txpush, it will take your source file and push it to Transifex, and all your new strings that appeared in your files will actually appear on Transifex as well. Transifex will also update your other languages. So if you have 2 new strings in English, they will appear in all other language files. You don't even need to merge those files and append those entities at the end. And when you pull, you will get all the translations for all your resources. In the case of Django, it's 16 files times 50 languages. So it's like 500 files. So an extra step to automate your workflow is to not even have to run these commands by yourself. So you can put them in your makefile or in your continuous integration platform. So whenever you issue a new build, or whenever a new Git commit hook is fired, you can run tx push, and then files will be set automatically. And when you're ready to package your application, you can just run tx pull. So then you don't even have to do anything. You just have to code. And that's the ultimate goal. There's also a rich API to translate dynamic content that is not in files. And we're starting to create more integration points, like run services on GitHub, pull requests, and postbacks, webhooks, and we're considering writing a Heroku add-on as well. Here's an example of the API. It's quite a complete API at this point. You can just use it to send translations and get them back. And some of our customers are crowdsourcing translations, and some of them are not crowdsourcing them. They are using professional translators. So you can use Transifex either just as a storage engine for your translations and the repository management for your localization files, or you can actually crowdsource your work, or you can even just create it, use it for your workflow. There's a proofreading step to increase quality, and a bunch of other add-ons that help translators do their work more efficiently and with higher quality, like the reviewing system, Glossary, and professional file formats. Some other nifty features of having a centralized solution is that you can find all the people on Transifex and actually invite them to your project and maybe even hire them. You can see here people that translated like 2 million strings, 2 million words on Transifex. This is a screenshot of the localization editor. The review process. It's worth noting that, for example, let's take Reddit, for example. They will crowdsource their work, but they want some control over the quality. So they are promoting some of the translators to the reviewer level. And these are selected people that we trust, that we know that know how to translate our content in the precise way that we want them to translate, and have shown a history, a track record of good translations. So they can go and just click that checkbox at the end, and once a string has reached a review level, then mere mortal translators cannot change it back. They could, however, send suggestions and vote on them using the web interface as well. So when a reviewer goes in and sees, okay, this string has a lot of votes for a better translation, I can just use that one. This is a screenshot for the glossary. Again, translation quality feature, allowing translators to select certain keywords and provide specific translations across the project. And this is it. It's an overview of how the localization landscape is today, a modern way to actually manage your files. So I wanted to end this sooner than later so that we can start having a discussion and start answering questions that you guys might have.
Did you guys build your own TM system?
Yes. So for people who don't know what TM means, it's a translation memory system. It's a system where the localization solution remembers everything that was translated so far, everything. And then when a new string appears, it does fuzzy matching and finds similar translations in the past and gives those suggestions to the translator to use. You can see one here at the bottom. We found a similar translation in the past with 80% match. So we had to build our own translation memory system because there was no other translation system out there that would integrate so well with what we're doing. So we want really fine-grained control over when to run the translation memory engine, when to update them. For example, if you have HTML, we want to remove the HTML content before doing the fuzzy matching so that we have a better leverage on top of the translation engine. So we had to build our own, yeah.
And also, so is it up to me or my side to guarantee the quality and maintain the quality control?
Yes. Our company does not provide translation services. You will either need to, it's similar to open source, I guess. You can either crowdsource it and select people to actually improve the quality. If you have a big enough community, you can really do it. Like Twitter has 400,000 translators. They can do it. right? So it's like the Linux principle, right? The more eyeballs that see the code, the less bugs. But, however, using the reputation system that we built, you could find quality translators to actually improve the quality, or you can hire professional translators. We're just the workflow and the collaboration platform, at least at this point.
Does your platform also handle paying translators?
Paying?
Yes.
Paying.
Paying, yes.
Okay.
Money.
Not at this point, but it's something that we're considering for the future.
So all of the work done by translators is done for free, or we have to set up a side channel to pay them?
Yeah, at this point, yeah. We have some mechanism to help you do that. I mean, we can show you how many words were translated by a translator, what's the TM leverage for those guys, and start working with that. There are a number of customers that actually do it today. But we're going to improve that in the future. It's really key to actually streamline the whole process.
Thank you.
Thanks for the talk. You mentioned that you handle dynamic content, database content, that sort of thing, but I didn't see how it fit into the workflow. Can you talk a little bit about the workflow? How is it go through the API? How do you interact with Transifex for dynamic content?
So the API, you can use the API to upload content on Transifex similarly to how you upload translation files. It's not really different. Transifex takes your file, breaks it down to segments, and then puts the segments in a database. Instead of us doing that, you can do it yourself. So you can create a Django app that takes your content and puts them in Transifex. We built a Drupal plugin that does exactly that, takes the content from Drupal and puts them in Transifex. Now, it depends on your website, when do you want to push content and when do you want to pull. The basic principle is whenever you have new English content or updated English content, you want to push. And Transifex has postbacks so that it can notify your web application to actually, this translation has reached 100%. You need to pull now. So you can use the API to get the translation and store it in your database.
Okay, thank you.
So great talk, and it's a good product, and we plan to work on it in the future with open source, and certainly, hopefully, with this consumer notebook. But when I looked at it a year ago, installing it on something besides Fedora was a lot more engineering than what we were willing to put in. And so I know that you guys have a hosted solution, but I don't know if it's still that way. I know this is the hard question, so.
No, so today you can just pip install Transifex and it should work.
So I can do that on my MacBook Air and it should just work?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you.
Ideally, yes. However, it's worth noting that we're starting to add a lot of extra stuff. So you might, in the near future, you might need to add Redis and MongoDB and other things. So I don't know how easy it will be. Ideally, it will be really easy.
As long as the Python just does what it's supposed to do, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. But no, we'll probably go with the hosted solution. It was just something that...
Yeah, you can definitely install it. The trend is for people not to install it because it's a pain to maintain at some point. Yeah, we do have upgrades and everything. But web applications, especially big ones with complex and multiple stuff, are hard to maintain. So, but yeah, it should really work. Just really work. Let us know if it doesn't.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks for the talk. You mentioned that you do weekly releases, and that brought something to mind. A pain point that we have, we aim to do weekly releases as well.
What's your project?
Work for idealist.org, a website project. We find the workflow very difficult in that we have features that can only fully land if they're fully translated. And our translator resources aren't necessarily available in a timely manner to do that. So I'm wondering if you have features in the tool or suggestions in the workflow side to sort of manage branchy development of translations. It's something that we can do, and we hold these features off and they get translated separately, and then they come back, and then we have another pain point of merging translation conflicts between branches that are out side by side. Is that something that you run into in your weekly releases, or are there features around that?
That's a good question. So similarly to, I don't know, a coding repository, you can have multiple files in it. So you can upload multiple type version of your resources. You can have your UI-version 1, UI-version 2. You can manage them that way. There's also a feature in Transifex called releases it's like a collection of resources, more or less. So you can take 5 of your resources that comprise version 1 and see the statistics just for that release. So you could do branch translation using that feature. It's quite handy, actually. We do it as well. Now, in terms of, you also mentioned another small thing. Okay, how to reuse translations between releases. So using the translation memory, you can definitely do that, because once you translate on one release, this will populate your project's translation memory. So when you start translating in the new release, you can take those translations using the translation memory and populate your new resources. So you can use that. And finally, the third point that you raised was how to coordinate translators and see their availability. This is one of the features that we are developing. I don't know how soon it will go live. But we're developing a task system, a job system that you can assign tasks to specific people. So you can say that these 3 resources need to be translated in 1 week, or in 5 days, or 1 day. And we really need them. Otherwise, we cannot go live. So you can start building a more fine-grained workflow using the tasks.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, great talk, thanks. First, a quick question. Can I initialize the translation memories? Let's say I have an existing app that already has some PO files that might be mostly up to date, but possibly out of date. Can I sort of upload those as to sort of get things started, or can I only upload the POT file?
No, you can upload all files.
Okay.
So there are 2 ways to do that. You can either upload all your files, all your PO files, and then Transifex will take those and run the TM automatically. You don't have to manage the TM. Transifex does that for you. So that's the easy way. There is also another way that you can upload a standard TMX file, which is the standard industry standard translation memory format, exchange format.
I see.
So you can also upload TMX files.
Okay, cool. And just a quick question. I don't know if you're familiar with Translate Wiki, and if you are, can you give maybe 3 high-level points where you might differ from them?
Well, Translate Wiki mostly specializes on wiki stuff, as far as I know. It's not specialized in translating neither dynamic content nor files, nor like PO files. It's harder for it to maintain. It doesn't have a command line client. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure about the collaboration features either. How can you create teams and manage teams in different projects and things like that? Right. I haven't seen it for quite a while. I know that they're doing a really good job with Wikipedia, though.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Hi. Is there any place in Transifex for built-in machine translation support, which, while far from perfect, can sometimes be a useful way to at least get a translation started for a project and then have humans fix it later on?
So this is the translation interface. You can see the English string on the top left and the Greek on the top right. So right next to the M there, when you hover and you start translating, a small button comes. It says machine translate.
Oh, well, perfect.
So you can use it to machine translate that particular entity. And yeah.
Would you have to do that for each string, though, individually, or could you just run that over a whole file and then maybe go through later and see if it makes sense?
That's an issue for debate. A lot of people have told us not to support that because it is being abused. But in the future, we plan on allowing you to select the entities in a mass way, like select all my entities in my file and machine translate them.
Okay.
So you could do that in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
We just need to make sure that it's implemented the right way so that it's not abused.
Right, right. Okay, thank you.
Hi. Can you talk a little bit about the best practice to make your Python application easy to translate? What is the best practice for?
Well, the Django documentation has a lot of advice on how to do that. The current way that it's implemented is, I don't know, I mean, it works for us. We don't have many problems in maintaining the translated code snippets. We do have 2 PO files, one for the open source version and one for the Transifex.net theme. It works pretty okay. We didn't face many internationalization issues so far, to be honest. Do you have any specific ones that you want to mention?
No, actually we are going to do international.
Okay. Well, you can start and see how it goes. I wouldn't say that you will face many problems in the internationalization aspect. The plural thing is the most complex, I guess. The most complex thing, you can have 2 or 3 lines that are unnecessary in your code. But other than that, I don't know many other issues. Let us know if you have any.
Thank you.
All right, thank you guys. Let me know if you have any other questions.